Welcome, everybody. You are in the exhibition A World Without Us. You're also at the start of the conference Future Life. First, I will tell a little bit about the exhibition that you're in, A World Without Us. Then I will introduce Anna Dumitriu, next to me, the curator of the Future Life conference, and then we'll head off with the first panel. A World Without Us basically has three sources of inspiration. I mean, the title, of course, kind of already inspires us to think about what it is to be humans on this planet, what it is to have a planet without humans on it. Four of the pieces in this exhibition are the results of a European residency network that IMPAKT is part of. It's called the European Media Art Platform. It has 11 members, amongst which Laboral in Spain, Ars Electronica in Linz, Austria, FACT Liverpool, and in various other European countries. And one of them also is IMPAKT. And four of the works here have been made in residency, a 2-month residency, in one of these media labs, media art festivals. And I was looking for a proper context to present these works in. I also visited more than a year ago an exhibition in the Hardware Medienkunstverein in Germany, in Dortmund, where actually two of the works, where there was a similar exhibition, and two of the works that you can see in this exhibition have been taken from there. Another source of inspiration was Riboka, the Riega Biennial of Contemporary Art in Riga, sorry, not in Riega, but in Riga, Latvia, where amongst others the Homo Stupidus. Stupidus by Maarten van der Einde was exhibited, and the Epoch piece that is not on at the moment, but that's on that monitor. And together with these four pieces from the European Media Art Platform, I thought they made a wonderful exhibition that is somehow dealing with how we, as humans, use technology, how we deal with our planet, of course the negative impact that we all have, think of climate change, but also how technology can be used to fight these effects. It also deals with artificial intelligence and the idea of maybe having a next species after human beings. And it deals, of course, with robotics. One installation made by Anna and Alex, that you can't see now, is the robotic installation over there. So we brought together these pieces in this exhibition, and two of the works are, as already said, by Anna Dumitriu and Alex May. Alex May sitting over there, Anna Dumitriu sitting, standing next to me. The Agea bot is what you made in Laboral in Spain, so that's one of the EMAP residency pieces. And I invited Anna to curate conference to fit with A World Without Us, also imagining future life on a planet with or without human beings on it. I think the various options that we have on the table will be discussed in today's and tomorrow's conference. We're very happy to have Anna here, yeah, please, maybe you can tell something about your inspirations while curating Future Life and what we have ahead of us today and tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Ariane. Yeah, I'm really pleased to be here and welcome all the audience and all the speakers. It's so exciting to see you all here. Yeah, the idea very much is taken from this idea of a world without us. But I think sometimes I veer on the sort of idea of I'm not that bothered about it. Like we're going to become extinct at some point. Everything does, and bacteria and things will live on after us. So the artwork that we have here is this Agea bot is very much inspired by that. These organisms that were the first things on the planet and will very much likely live on way beyond us. So I was thinking about these themes about robotics, future life, and technology. And these panels very much evolved out of that. So we're looking at the impact of these technologies on what that might mean for future life, i.e. it can be human life, or it might be other forms of life, non-human life too, bacteria. We've got kind of everything here. And other situations, a world without us doesn't necessarily imply a universe without us. So that, I think, might also be coming up too. And then tomorrow we've got the sessions very much focused on biological future life. And we'll be discussing things like pandemics that might wipe us all out, and other kind of biomes that we might build, or all sorts of things like that. And also the ethics around that and how we need to think about that. So that's kind of the idea behind it all, and I hope you can stay for all the events, because it's going to be really exciting, I think. And that's kind of all I need to say at this point.
You'll see both of us again in various roles today and tomorrow, because Anna, you will be moderating the upcoming session, I think.
No,
and
you're moderating he's moderating the upcoming.
Okay, then I'll be moderating.
I'm doing the biology tomorrow, okay. And you're moderating me in a panel.
That's what I wanted to say. You're also in the panel at 4 o'clock. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Marion Dunnewind, the director of IMPAKT, Center for Media Culture, where you are a guest right now. Please, let's continue with the first panel. And I have to invite Alex for that then.
Yeah.
Please, a warm applause for Alex May.
Hello, very nice to be here. I'm introducing the first panel that we're going to be looking at robots, VR and hacking as it relates to possibilities of sort of future life and in a post-climate change, post-singularity world. We'll be hearing from all of the panel members that will be joining me on stage soon enough, but we're all going to be doing sort of 5-minute intros to sort of introduce ourselves, introduce our practices, and sort of set the stage for sort of where we're coming from. And also, obviously, at the end of the session, we'll have a chance to ask us questions. So, as you can see, we have our CareBot here, which is the project that I did with Anna here. And this is a project very much about sort of speculating on what life form could survive in a post-singularity, post-climate change world. If we keep going the way that we're going to destroy everything, and you know, what can be left, and can there be sort of some trace of us? So Archaea are these oldest life form on Earth. They're one of the trees of life, the branches on the trees of life. They haven't really changed much in millions of years. They survive in very hot climates and very cold conditions. So we thought they would be a really good sort of vehicle for a sort of, because they like hot environments already. So you know, global warming, they'll be quite happy. So we created this thing, and the idea is, you know, could you upload your consciousness into a vessel like this and send it into the future? Which is something that we'll be discussing in the panel. This is Harry. This is Humanoid Art Research Robot 1. Harry is a full-size humanoid robot that we created to sort of really play around with social robotics and sort of how people react to a robot that's pretty much their own size. Harry is exhibiting boredom. It gets very bored of people around it, so which is obviously a complete opposite of what people expect, and you end up having to entertain the robot and be the servant of the robot rather than the other traditional way around. We have in the corner, they're not on at the moment, they're being extra antisocial, but our antisocial swarm robots, again playing with the ideas of what we expect of robots, all the ideas that we sort of project onto them, our ideas about them as our servants, or you know, under our control, and they run around this little pen, and they don't like each other, and they don't like the pen that they're in, and they really don't like people. They're just trying to get away and sort of find their own sort of space. So the idea of sort of creating these robot things that actually don't want anything to do with us. You know, we have this expectation that robots want to, will be at our beck and call or there to serve us. Another social robotics project that we did was this one where the robot has a projector in the back of the head and will turn to look at people and invite them over, and its face will start to blend into the person looking at the robot, which generally freaks them out considerably. But the idea was that it's not trying to be you, it's trying to look like you, like a family member. Would you feel more comfortable with a robot in your home if it looked familiar? And that was the... Most people said no, but, a few people were up for it. In my art practice, again, this is a project with Anna, but this is a very abstracted shot, just because trying to show VR stuff in a slideshow is sort of almost impossible. But using VR and using technologies to transport people inside artworks or inside different environments. So and obviously John's going to talk a lot more about this sort of thing, being able to transport people into entirely computer-driven environments, which offers amazing possibilities for artistic and creative and research and development of new work. And it's kind of like this interplay between the eye of the computer. I'm working on this series of algorithmic photographs which combine many, many frames of video into a single image, but done from the viewpoint of saying, what if the code was the film in a camera? If we're taking sort of individual pixels and combining them into photos, how does the camera see us? This is ants crawling along a wall over sort of 5 minutes. Is it, so different from us on a beach? You might recognize this from your recent trip to Gijón. How do we look through the eye of a computer? Do we look strange and distorted? I call this algorithm the Baconator. It turns people into Francis Bacon paintings. And I was reminded of this Philip K. Dick quote, which I've slightly mangled for the purposes of this slide, from A Scanner Darkly. What does a scanner see? Into the head, down into the heart. Does a scanner see into me, into us, clearly or darkly? I hope it sees clearly, because I can't any longer these days see into myself. And I thought, in relation to machine learning algorithms, into how we're being classified on Facebook and big data processing, that's tracking our actions, how does the computer see us? It doesn't see us the way that we see ourselves. And we can't see the way that the computer sees us. But this is having an effect on our lives on a day-to-day basis. This is ruling our lives more and more. And we're not necessarily privy to these things. So it's this sort of interplay with that I'm interested in, with the sort of how the computer sees us, how we see ourselves, that the technology becomes a mirror to where we're at and where we're going. So that's it. If you want to see more of all these things, that's where to go. So I just very quickly want to introduce the other members of the panel. They're going to come up and do their slideshows as well. We've got Ghislaine Boddington, who's here, who is an artist curator, researcher and creative director of Body Data Space. Her work examines the representation of our physical selves and our identities in virtual environments and the hyper-enhancement of our human senses through the digital transmission and reception of body data such as touch, motion, biofeedback and gesture. She has created many exhibitions, including Robots and Avatars, Our Colleagues and Playmates of the Future, and Future Love, which was for Leicester's FutureFest. And then we've got John Holder, who is the Chief Technologist of the Realities Centre, space design for London-based startups working in the field of emerging realities technologies, with over 20 years' experience in VR and immersive technology. He specialises in mixed reality, virtual reality, 360-degree video, photogrammetry, and augmented reality production. And we've got Ine. Ine Poppe is a writer, teacher, journalist and artist who leads the hacking department at the Willem de Kooning Academy in Rotterdam. In 2017, she wrote the script for Florist Kayak, the modular body that won a Dutch Emmy. Her most recent documentary is Teeth, about the cultural meaning of human teeth and how art deals with it in roughly the last 3,000 years. And last year, she created a chatbot called Pip, a piece of software that talks about love, and made a sound installation of it for the successful Robot Love exhibition in Eindhoven. So I think we're going to invite Ghislaine to come up and give her presentation.
Thank you, Alex. I'm on this one. So, hello everybody. It's really nice to be invited here, and it's great to be at IMPAKT actually, so it's very exciting, all this new stuff starting to emerge. Thanks to Anna and Alex too, who I've actually worked with a lot and shown several of the pieces that you just saw in different points. So I'm from a collective called Body Data Space, and we've focused, as the name says, entirely on the body, data and virtual and physical space. And we look at the physical body and the data body, the data cells, our data cells, and for many years we've been looking at the blend and convergence of presence, and virtual presence and physical presence, and how this comes through in new representations. So I'm going to show some of the little bit about what we've done, and then I'm going to talk a bit about future life side. Although I'm going to say this is more about a world with us than without us, this particular presentation. So I work under, for the presentations under this title, The Internet of Bodies, looking at our aliveness, our connectivity and our collectivity. And so, as a little introduction, looking at virtual and physical worlds, the blending and merging of these, and looking at our identities and how this is shifting, and our collaborations and our innovations in these new worlds that we're in, diversities and immersion, etc. And actually, very happily, finally, to say that we're at a point in time where the body is starting to be regarded as the important part of this, the interface that we need to work with, which is my strong belief that we need to be starting with the body. So we work with liveness as our top line. We look at the essence of liveness, and this you'll recognise. I'm coming from a dance background, performing arts background, so most of the words on here you'll recognise are very much part of your everyday lives. They're very much discussed in performing arts terms. Presence and absence, memory, suspension of belief, but we're all breathing. We never stop breathing, we're always on. When we're asleep, our hearts continue to beat, we continue to breathe. And that's a sensory richness which is very much part of ourselves. We're throbbing, we're alive all the time. Here we are, emotional. And this experiential liveness is what I believe really is about this real-time connectivity, is bringing humans together, looking at our emotions, our involvements in belonging. It's that natural connectivity that we need to translate in through digital connectivities and using virtual physical experiences to enhance this. So our focus really is on hyper-enhancement. And this slide is about the digital data that is actually flowing from all of us at all times, and which flows out from us, which today, of course, we know much of this. We can actually collect that data, whether we collect it on Fitbits, through our biometrics, whether we choose to even look at facial and iris, even coming through the airport. We're dealing with this now, etc. So many of these outputs, transmission outputs from the body, are starting to be used in much of our lives. Some are still coming through, smell, taste, tactile and touch, but this is artists and pioneers in the experimental scene that have made most of this happen. This, of course, is on and off. We can turn our digital transmission of our data off, and we can choose to, get off grid or whatever we do. But this is the merge of the physical and data self. So it's how do we use this into more collaborative spaces where we come together. Many spaces that we are in already, social media spaces, blogs and forums, installations, virtual worlds, but still we're rarely engaging with our full bodies and our full selves. We're still at this point in research where it's not all of us yet that's in there, that's actually collecting and sharing and collaborating. And what I'm interested in is actually how we move towards that more digital intimacy, where the world is working for us in an intimate way, where that collaborative share space is not just about exchanging text and audio and visual, but it's about exchanging love and intimacy, compassion, empathy, and how we bring that together across time and space. So we've done a lot of work, just three examples quickly, using heartbeat and breath. This is a large-scale immersion piece that we commissioned in 2003 from TookZoom, and this used breath and heartbeat data. It should change everything around you. And live connecting avatar spaces, virtual spaces that hang between here, 4 cities, London, Brussels, Istanbul and Paris. And also collective spaces where we can experience togetherness, where we generate audio and visual by being together. The more we actually are working together, the more happens in these scenarios. So back to the theme of the conference and the whole thing. This is a slide I made 20 years ago, and I still use it pretty much in every presentation. And of course, at that point, I'd be talking about, yeah, we're on our way towards the cyborg, robotics, you know, and we're well on our way towards the avatar. But I believe now we've gone both ways. So Stellark is an example, and Donna Haraway as early examples. Now artists like Mark Farid and Marco Donnarumma, working with the body, senses and link-ups. And of course, this is examples from the past, Steve Mann and early VR. But I'm not convinced we're going to be wearing these things onwards. So, looking at deep body tech, yeah, that's where I'm interested, is actually how we take this into the body, through smart skin circuits, through implants, millibots, these tiny little millibots that can go right through our systems, through spray-on skins, etc., giving us warm data which is coming from us. Implants, tiny little microchip implants. We're hearing about them everywhere. Implant parties, well, actually I've been involved in 3 or 4 of these. There's more coming, a lot more implant parties coming up. And they're being used. This is Swedish businessmen, 3,000 businessmen already implanted for their season tickets on the trains, etc. So talking about the future of collaborative share space, that's where we need to go. We need to bring all this into the middle so that we can actually work and play with the robots, with the avatars, with our sense enhancements, actually ourselves in there too, our live bodies involved in that too. And immersion domes is, I think, where we're moving towards. I'd like to see more happen in domes, like to see places we can work together, we can play and be together, and connected domes. Like this is the SAC one in Montreal, and this is Collective Reality, the piece that I showed earlier, actually in the immersion dome there, working with collective groups. These are coders, actually, VR coders, all working together on physical motion within immersion spaces. So I'm advocating here for a more digital intimacy and a pleasure environment in the middle, where we're actually sensually involved in connected spaces, where we've enhanced ourselves through deeper body tech scenarios. And that's what we call the Internet of Bodies. It's about developing collective embodiment alongside collective intelligence, this blend between the two, the mind and the body, and not separating the two apart. Okay, thank you.
Well, hello everybody, and thank you very much, IMPAKT, and our Jeanne and Alex and Anna for inviting me here, and for everyone from IMPAKT for making such a great event. My name's John. I'm the head of technology at the Reality Centre, which is London's immersive media space, and we are blessed with a nice building that we're based in, which is where the BBC and ITV are. And if we go inside it, we've got a great event space, and we've got really interesting studios and offices and some co-working space. And what we provide is positive support for to accelerate and grow the adoption of augmented and virtual reality by bridging gaps between the creatives and the startups and the corporations through events, education, incubation, consulting and development. This is our immersive studio, and we're blessed to have lots of great technology. We have a partnership with HDC. It helps provide early access to some of our technology, including things like Vive Pros, and there's a lot of new virtual reality technology that's coming out in this year, early part of this year actually. And so I just wanted to get a show of hands. Who knows what XR is? I'm just going to explain it very briefly because I might at some point talk about XR instead. It's a bit interchangeable. It's basically that virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, which is kind of a combo, and 360. And it's kind of an all-encompassing term. Some people call it extended realities, but the X is sometimes a smaller X, a bit like a mathematical equation. So it's realities of sorts. There's RR as well, which is what we're in now, real life. What we do, as I was saying, is we have an academy and we run events. And here are some of the courses that we run. Unity courses, Microsoft HoloLens development courses, and we're just looking at things like Magic Leap development, things like Unreal Engine, they're games engines. This is all to do with virtual reality and augmented reality development. And then a bunch of different 3D modeling and animation tools that we run, as well as Adobe Creative Suites. So we run those courses, and we also run a lot of events. We run hackathons for smart cities, for medical, for architects. We run corporate events. We run events for creatives and for artists. And we're lucky to have a bunch of sponsors to help us to do that. We recently set up a 5G lab, and that was in association with Huawei, who are in the news quite a lot now. And they brought over their equipment, actually from Spain, from Madrid, and we set it up in the lab. And it took about a week or a week and couple of days, lots of late nights, fine-tuning it to make this 5G lab, this high bandwidth, super high bandwidth actually, and super low latency network. And so we could test XR wirelessly without the cables, so the cables are cut. And we tested it with a bunch of very innovative organizations that are well known, like InnoActive and Inition and others, and you can see some of them up there. And that was basically where a lot of the future of VR and AR is going to be, where the processing is going to be in the cloud and transmitted directly. We also recently announced a partnership with New York University, that's the Tandon School of Engineering, and we're basically connecting New York and London thriving ecosystems and building bridges to help cross-collaboration between the two cities. And we do some consultancy and development as well, bringing your ideas to life. And here's an example of something we did recently. We were involved and asked to be involved in a Halloween a horror story for London's first ever haunted house. And it was free roaming, multi-collaborative, and so it's using a lot of high-tech equipment. And another one that you might recognize is Somni. We're involved in that as well. And we provided some of the equipment, some of the consultancy, some of the creative advice on that as well. And so enough about that. I just wanted to open it up now to say a more open thinking path. So anything useful, any useful idea about the future should appear to be ridiculous. And that was from the director of Hawaii Research Center of Future Studies. And so I'm just going to mention that in the future, we're going to have superpowers. And we already have some superpowers, but we're going to gain more superpowers through XR and other technologies and AI, etc. I've also got a VR headset. If anyone hasn't tried virtual reality, come and find me afterwards, or if you're interested, come and find me afterwards, and I'll show you some virtual reality. So, I'm going to whiz through this because I've literally got a minute left. So, superpowers. Photogrammetry is where you scan a space. This is a ruin in and the Palestinian borders that no longer exists. And the only way you can visit this is in our VR installation. And we've had architects and people going there and crawling around on the floor all over the place, bumping into walls and stuff like that, experiencing this ruin. Videogrammetry is very much like photogrammetry. It's kind of scanning, but it's with a fourth dimension of video. And teleportation is something that Microsoft are working on, and we're all working on virtual teleportation. Those three will give us time travel and remote viewing. That's a superpower to have. Brain wave reading is something else that's happening, so we're interpreting the brain. Then DARPA are working on something called a minimally invasive stendrade, and they connect directly to the neurons and can read neurons, allegedly, which will give us things like abstract body control and mind surrogating. So what am I talking about? I'm just talking about all of these superpowers that we're going to have in the future. It sounds daft, it sounds crazy, but I think we're living in very interesting times. So it is truly the beginning of the future. Thank you very much.
First of all, I want to thank Arjen Dunne. Oh, I don't even know your last name well. But I know the one of Anna Dimitriou and Alex May. So thank you all for inviting us, and also all the other artists for their talk, or you for your talk, and John for his talk. Well, let's... I want to tell something about myself before talking about the future. In general, my work is mostly what you can call mixed media. I write scenarios for films, make documentaries, but I also do web projects and art projects. And I thought, well, when I'm here to talk with you, I will talk about one of my first art projects and one of my latest art projects. And then you might think, what has buttermilk cheese to do with the future? Well, we don't know that yet. What I tried to do in that project, I will show you what that project is in a second. I also want to talk about Chatbot Pip, one of my latest projects I did for the Robot Love. And they all have in common that what you see here, that we collaborate, mix media, and some of them raise a debate. And this is I made it in 1983. When I was 23 years old, I caught a kid in a squad. His name was Zorro. He's an artist now too. And I made a cheese of my mother's milk, but more as a media project, because I was interested how media would react. So it was a kind of feminist project presented in different media. So I'll show you a little, oops. Yes, there it is. Here you see me at age 23. It's in a bank, and we are sitting for, it's a Japanese film crew who came. And they were filming for a television program called How Much? And they wanted to know if it was really true or a fiction or not true that a lady in Holland made a cheese out of mother's milk. It was for a show in Japan about Europe, so they had all sorts of subjects. Is this true or is this not true? And I think that's one of the reasons I want to show this project here too, because a lot of, when it comes to science and about the future, there is a lot of stuff from what you think, is that really true? Is it possible? Is it not true? Because the influence of the media, how we think about the future, is huge. And also how it deceives us, and that it gives us an idea of things that are not possible yet, but might be possible. And there's a lot of exaggeration. So that's why I wanted to show that little clip. And we talked about, at that time, about media mystique, which was about how can you present, that's what artists would call media mystique. And it was about how different media interpret your work, or how you would bring a story into the world. And I think a lot of stuff we see here in this exhibition today is about storytelling. chatbot Pip. There was a big exhibition this year in Eindhoven called Robot Love, and the curator of that exhibition had some talks with me before it started, and then I started to talk about chatbots, and I said, what are you doing for the website? Wouldn't it be nice if you would have a chatbot on the website? Who here never talked with a chatbot? Can I see hands? Does everybody know what a chatbot is, so I don't have to explain it? That's wonderful. So, actually, I was sitting there. I worked on the chatbot with the team, and we made a scenario, and I wrote a whole book. And one of the persons who worked with me on that is Vicky, sitting over there. And what we did is actually made a sort of scenario. If people would voluntarily give their email address to Pip, then they would get a love letter, and the bot would start stalking people. And if you would go back and say that you didn't like the stalking process, then the bot would write you again. And at a certain point, it would say to you, please don't spend your time so much behind the computer, go to the exhibition. So the bot had a sort of scenario into it, like a human being, first attracted, then it would pull you again, and push you away and pull you again. So the bot was, if you were interested, the bot was not so interested in you anymore. So, and then we did, all the conversations were stored anonymously. We made a selection, and with 14 people, we recorded the sound in a sound studio. And I hope I push now the right button. No, again not. Shit. I don't understand the touchscreen, sorry. It's so nice that there are boys helping me out.
I think is what we do with technology is what really matters.
Yes.
I want excitement and danger, and I want to know your opinion on the future of bots.
I kind of think there will be a tipping point when they see humans are fucking idiots that are destroying the planet.
I have no idea what to do with your command. Please contact my botmaster.
So what we did is we put human voices, and we recorded all pieces of conversations, and we made sort of, let's say, a sound sculpture of that. So you can hear what people are discussing with this love bot. This is just, I thought it was fitted here, so I cut it out. Anna also asked me if I would say something about a hacking miner. Actually, I made once a documentary about Dutch hackers. And that's why the director of the school came to me and said, Ine, do you want to help us write a curriculum of the department hacking, the minor hacking? And I said, sorry, what do you mean by that? Why? And he said, yeah, because you made that film. And I said, but what does hacking mean? And he said, that's up to you. You're completely free to fill in the curriculum as long as you keep the name hacking. And actually, I don't like so much the name hacking because hacking is so fashionable. Everything's got hacked. The state got hacked, and the municipality got hacked, and fashion got hacked, and everything but if you look at it as an attitude, if you change the term, or you use, because I had to use that term, if you use the term hacking as a sort of attitude, and you look at the origins of hacking, I talked before we started here with this gentleman over there. Sorry, and it just flipped my mouse. But I was talking with a gentleman over there, and he was looking in the history, or he told something about the history of hacking. And if you interpret the word hacking more as a form of, let's say, disruptive type of other way of finding your way in the world, it could really fit very well in an art school. So it's not only technology-based, it's more a mentality. And one of the projects we did, for instance, with the second year, you can see it here, is that they have to buy second-hand toys and stuff and go to a second-hand shop. And then they, with a little group, and then they have to appropriate a thing, change the thing. And for instance, there were girls here who found a baby doll. It's the pink one. And what they did is they used a chip inside of the doll, and they changed it was saying mama, mama, and they made it slower, so it's mama, mama, and then it would go and run around. So they're working with tech, but not only tech. So, and we do that, we do different type of projects, but this is one of the projects we do with second-year students. It's just a sort of, yeah, they all have to destroy each other robots, and the last one who survives is the winner. So it's just one of the things. So this is my website, or our website, with my partner, who's couldn't come because he's in Newcastle. He works at the media studio, at the media lab, a bit similar as your media lab, John. And he's doing research on tangible interfaces, so it's one of my interests too. And I thought maybe we should talk in our discussion about the power of art and the power of media, and about strong ideas or weird ideas, or what you already talked about. And I think we can also talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. I love the project with your robots. Where is it hanging? What you were discussing, that they didn't like humans and didn't like... And I also like, well, we will discuss this. And maybe we can talk about hacking as an attitude for future scenarios. That was my talk. Thank you.
So thank you all very much for your talks. Obviously, 5 minutes is not very much. I know you could go on for hours and hours, but we'll try and cover some subjects in the next 20 minutes or whatever we've got. So, Ine, I was going to start the first question to you, because obviously a lot of the projects that I show were physical robots, but robots can also be software-based, and like the one that you've done. So how is robotics changing the world?
Whoa.
Yeah, just a gentle opening.
Whoa. Oh gosh. How does robotics change the world? Well, it's too general for me. Can you be more specific?
So, I mean, there's obviously the things like automation of jobs, which is, but that's very much like the Industrial Revolution, where, you know, the printing press and machines took over the role of physical labour. But in other areas like sex robots and social care and military robots and even exoskeletons and you know, remote presence and things. This sort of extension of ourselves and in our control in the physical world.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that. I'm going a little bit off topic, because I'm interested in intrusive technologies when it has to do with neurology in the brain. And there's a neurologist in Belgium. I became friends with him, and he does a lot of operations on Parkinson patients who are trembling, and maybe you've all seen it, maybe on television once, because as soon as, let's say, the chip is turned on, it's not really a chip, but when they have the device in their head, their operator get the device in their head, and then it goes here. I've seen it, how they do it also. And then it's here with a button, and they put different electric current through the brain. And then somebody suddenly doesn't tremble anymore. So it's a sort of, yeah, actually it really works. It's wonderful, it helps. And then I read about a story that a guy who was very kind, suddenly his character changed, that he became an asshole, and sometimes, so I really want to talk with a neurologist about it. And then the neurologist said to me, well, I'm so sorry for you, but it's not the DBS, the deep brain stimulation, but it's the medication who causes this change of character. And for me, it was a bit of a pity, because I thought when it would be intrusive, then I could use it for a film scenario where this beautiful young girl changes in who's very, you know, decent, changes in a wild sex animal. But then, because of this DBS, but unfortunately, it wasn't that. But so I really believe that this type of technologies can do a lot. This neurologist also wanted to start an experiment with drug and alcohol addicts, but the medical commission didn't allow to do it, which I thought was is a shame. So he's still waiting. So it goes very slow. I think with a lot of stuff we've seen, it goes much slower than the media let us believe.
And Ghislaine?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. There's long waits. There's long waits in these, and we're in. I think we have to go through 30-year periods, really, from the initial concepts and ideas, even longer, from some of the early pioneers in these areas of how we're moving forward as human beings and what shifts are going to happen to us. So, I showed a couple of slides of Stellark and Steve Mann. Well, those are from the 80s and early 90s, and there's even earlier examples of this, and Haraway, Donna Haraway, and the thinking about it, which actually starts to be played with by pioneer artists and creatives, but it's still a long way off, to actually with the medical profession, like you say in this case, with deep brain stimulation implants, and others, there's still a long way to come,
And John?
With Stellark, for example, he made a robot that he gave the control to the audience and allowed them control it. And it was physically painful, and he had to relax himself. And a roommate, when I was a student, he put him in it and set it on an automatic program and went off and left him alone on stage perform. Which is, and Stellark's a very interesting character, and he's a great character actually. And Mark Adonamura, he also makes music with the muscles, and he has devices. In fact, I've been on some of his workshops, and we made devices using Arduinos and so forth to make this music out of just movement of the muscle. It's listening very closely with the microphones. Yeah. That's fantastic. When we're talking about invasive technologies, there's, as you say, there's a lot of ethics there. Ethics, for example, I'm thinking about the minimally invasive Stendrode, for example, and invasive technologies for military enhancement. When that's taken away, what's going to happen to the human that's left, for example? But then if we talk about robotics more generally, we can talk about virtual robots, and that's a whole other realm, really, and what do they do, and is it AI that's controlled by humans, or are they programmed just to do a specific task? And then we can talk about care bots, which are a very near future, and those care bots are coming to us very soon. I think LAPD has got a Robocop out there, hasn't it? I believe so. It's got some Robocops.
I think that was a film, actually.
That's true, but it's got real Robocops out there, I believe. Was it a film?
I mean, I think there's a couple of things that occur to me, because obviously we're sort of developing robots and imbuing them with layers of more physical abilities. Boston Dynamics obviously got these amazing walking robots, and also on the artificial intelligence side. And I'm intrigued. I mean, thinking about a future where humanity dies, cheery, and we've created these robots and things, and suddenly they're left without their human counterparts. It almost feels like we have to have a responsibility of programming them to cope in that environment. And I mean, it's interesting what you say about the remote presence thing, because in Fukushima they created a whole series of robots to get into the reactors and explore, and so these robots which can cope to an extent in a very hazardous post climate change world potentially. But I think,
What also is interesting is the swarm behavior, because if you look at what kind of robots they send in toxic environments. They're always sent in swarms, because and these swarms talk with each other. And actually, if you look at humanity that way, that we are a big swarm talking to each other, it sort of changed maybe also our ideas of individualism and how we are coping and how we are dealing with problems. Or well, just a remark.
As a model for reprogramming ourselves as a more constructive species. So, yeah, and John, I wanted to follow up with you about how mixed reality, hybrid reality changes experience. I mean, I remember watching that fairly flawed 1983 film Brainstorm with Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood, where people were actually able to record their senses and what they see and what they felt physically and emotionally, store it to tape and then play it back to somebody else. So they would have the same experience, but they could replay it like a video. And I was wondering if because like the internet has become so user-driven and user content-driven, is that not the ultimate end for sort of VR? It's user-generated content.
Interesting question. With mixed reality or virtual reality, when you're taken to another place, you are in that other world, but your body is feeling it, so that you've got memory muscles, muscle memory there, for example, that you remember these movements, and you're completely disorientated from the real world. Whether that impacts you long term or not is a major subject for research at the moment. For example, changing attitudes, removing phobias. For example, spider phobia. What's spider phobia called? Arachne something. Yes. So phobias can be reduced or removed, and our behaviors can be altered through virtual reality. And at what point, ethically, are we going to stop shoot-'em-up games when virtual reality becomes virtually indistinguishable from reality? Is a question that, it's not even really a question. It's got to happen.
But would you still want to play
later.
them if they were that visceral and that,
Well, will there be laws to stop you from killing a virtual person? Or with augmented reality, what if I wanted to change or block people in the audience or from my life, just like you do on Facebook? And Facebook owns Oculus, and Oculus is one of the two major players in XR. So there's a lot of ethical questions about that are unanswered, and it's a responsibility for probably for us all as people that are quite well aware of that. But I think as a designer or a creative or an inventor or even an early adopter, it's a responsibility that we should take with quite a lot of gravity.
Ghislaine, did you want to?
I completely agree on the ethics stuff, and we all had quite short presentations, so normally I've got a few slides on ethics too, and particularly around personal data, of course, because that's what I'm talking about, is actually, it is our own data and how that's used. And I tend to do a lot of work around, advocacy work around our own ownership of our personal data, which I believe quite strongly in. And how that relates into what happens with Facebook and Oculus and various things. So, but actually in a larger scale about our collective ethics and how we behave to each other. One thing I can say, I feel quite hopeful that because there's so much debate around this area at the moment. So we're seeing it obviously at this kind of level with intelligent people coming together and discussing it, but actually it goes all the way through society. And if you search AI and ethics at the moment, you'll find there's numerous committees all over the world looking at this, from whether it's the House of Lords in Britain with interviewing 280 professors about how AI should be sorted for us right through to, I think it's called the Toronto Declaration, which is the UN and human rights organisations coming together, and there's numerous ones. Now, this has to somehow unite and come to a point where there's maybe a bit more of a direct understanding, but maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I hope that we could go towards something where there was some quite clear lines come into place. The killing game is one of them, yeah, but there's many more areas than that too.
I'm not at all optimistic when it comes to privacy. I completely disagree with you. There was a hacker conference, I mean, in 2007 or so, or 8, 10 years ago, where the theme was, we lost the war. And they meant that we lost the war when it comes to our privacy. And I think we really forget it, we already lost it. Doesn't mean that you still have to fight or sort do something. But when it comes to privacy, I think it's almost an obsolete concept. And that's very sad. And we should, of course, for instance, when it comes to medical data, we should sort of try to get back our claim on our own data. But in so many fields, it's already a done fight. So
our data is too valuable to other people.
Yeah,
so they're finding increasing ways to extricate it from us and package it and sell it. Yeah. Anyway, that's the sort of...
Yeah, but that's another subject. But
don't get me started.
And I thought, well...
No, absolutely.
And if you talk about the future, if you imagine... maybe let's talk about artificial intelligence, which is another intelligence than human intelligence, and we can't copy that because machines are something else. They have no body, so they have a completely different way of being intelligent than we are intelligent. But let's say that computers don't have privacy. It would be interesting to have computer networks without any privacy. Have you ever thought about that?
They do kind of have privacy. In old computer architecture, you could literally jump anywhere in memory. Mm-hmm. So if you had a program in memory, somebody could just rip the data out of that. And these days, it's much harder to cross over those memory barriers. Yeah. So there is actually a sort of built-in privacy and security platform in there. But just... also sort of moving on the sort of digital side, Ghislaine, I wanted to ask you about uploading and the idea of uploading your consciousness. We mentioned that because that's one aspect of the Archaeabot project. But what happens to the human when you remove the body and the senses?
So the transhumanist movement was very strong on this, of course, and it is an image that we have for many, many years in our heads. There's this kind of brain with a few wires coming out of it, possibly, some kind of, bubbling vat like that, yes, which actually is all that's left of us, And I've personally had quite an aversion to that image, always been a body person, a dance person, a physical. And I think there's still some people who believe on that route. And usually it's, not to be rude here to some of my very good colleagues and friends, it's usually white intellectual men who actually really believe that we cannot exist without them into the future. So they must upload themselves because we will, as humanity will go down without their brains existing beyond this point in time. When I usually say to them, just write another book. Yeah, it's fine. We'll read your books. Yeah, so I think we're now at a point where the holistic body-mind interface is very much more understood on a mass level. And things like the growth of yoga, meditation, all of those more body environments where we are altering our states through, whether it's through deep body meditations and yoga, but also, many other ways of altering state through the physical, through pharmaceutical, and through obviously psychedelics, through electrodes, whatever, is very much part of the figure of 8 between the body and the mind. And I think that is, at least at the physical level, is, it's mass now. A number of people doing yoga meditation who are actually choosing to go back into the body to find an altered state which is linked to body-mind. So I think we've got to find new images of that completely.
John?
Yeah, uploading consciousness. Animes like Serial Experiments Lane touches on that. Ghost in the Shell touches on that. They're all good to think about and muse about. Uploading consciousness is a very, very difficult subject to discuss, but theoretically, if it's possible, what then happens to that consciousness? Does it connect with other consciousness? Do we end up with a global mind cloud? What happens there? And then what happens to the meat with the body itself? How we can think without our visceral self, without our body, is really quite difficult to get to grips with. That to think that artificial intelligence can have consciousness is a very difficult question to really accept. I think it may or may not happen. I think it's kind of my level of understanding of that is probably beyond my level of understanding whether it's really there. So I'm going to ask.
I think that's the key point. Really, is this visceral, and the body, the thinking body, and that consciousness is about the body and the brain. It's not just one on its own. So you mentioned body memory earlier, and actually, in most of us, no sports people, dance people, etc., body memory works much faster than brain memory does. Otherwise, you wouldn't get on stage and do a piece the same way every single night. You can't possibly think with your head before you do those steps, multiple steps.
Yeah, well, but on the other hand, it's still interesting, the whole idea that you can upload your conscious. Because, for instance, people who are, for instance, completely bodiless because they are in a coma or in a sort of, let's say, a vegetative state, they still have their brains thinking. Or, for instance, is this, what's his name? He is a graffiti artist, and he has this disease that, where at the end you can only he can now only move his eyes, but he can't talk, he can't do anything. But he still can express himself with his eye movements. So, which is comparable with the click of a computer. Go to the right or go to the left. So in that sense, what they did is there's a hacker group who made a wonderful device so that they can make gravity. It's the survival research. It's a group. They use open software, and there they make. They use the eye movements to make a gravity on big buildings. And I can look it up for you or somebody in the audience because I'm bad with names, but I have it in my computer somewhere how they are named. And but so I think it's possible. Why not? I think it's possible, and I don't think it's per definition. I really like that remark though, but I don't think it's per definition a white male thing, because as a middle-class white lady, I would like to upload my conscious in that thing of theirs.
Well, I was going to say, because I wanted to open it up to the audience, but just to get a yes or no whether you'd upload, so you'd be yes?
I would, yes,
Ghislaine?
definitely.
Not without some kind of physical form. So, which feeds through feelings, intuition, all the things that come from my body, which actually create my thoughts, create what I say. Yeah.
I'd carefully read the terms and conditions before I did, but
Very,
yes,
very wise.
quite possibly.
So do we have any questions from the audience? Please.
Yes. I want to talk about, I study robots and I study anthropomorphism in robots. And I was curious about this thought that came to me. For a long time now, I started thinking that it is very hard to work with robots because they break a lot, and it's very hard to program them to do things, and it's very hard to get any kind of autonomous life out of them. And even if you do, it's very limited. They're not very capable. So you talk about all of these, transhumanism, and I understand it's about the world without us. It's about the future, and it's where we're going and not where we are. But so anyway. I am worried right now very much about the deception that is going on in the field of robotics, where the robots are made to look like humans and they express their, like for example, the robots like Sophia, or now like all of these, this kind of like a fashion of making humanoid robots and calling them as if they can think like humans, and obviously they don't. Even to the level of imitating humans, they're not even imitating them well. So I see that not only in the field of robotics, but also in the field of like social media and all the big corporations that are making technology for us. I feel, and there is a huge amount of deception. What we get is not really what we're told we're getting. And everything is given, like all of the information is always given in a very exaggerated format. And all of that exaggeration kind of, anyway, so basically, long story short, what do you think, how do we as a society deal with deception in robotics, in tech companies? Because I think a lot of them have their business models completely built on deception. So, yeah.
Anyone want to pick that up?
I would just say about robotics and robots, there's a thing called the uncanny valley, and if a robot looks quite similar to a human, we tend to be quite repulsed by it because it's not alive, and we have this kind of mental framework that it's like a very ill person, best avoided. And if you stick a couple of googly eyes on a vacuum cleaner, we might have more empathy for it. And that deception of making things look very realistic is certainly a concern to myself. And deception in offerings from companies is certainly also a major concern. I don't know how we tackle it other than vote with our feet and our wallets, really.
I mean, just to add to that, because we've got residency at Hertfordshire where we make social robotics, and they were saying that if you've got a small robot with eyes, or just something that looks like a box, people don't expect it to be very intelligent. They don't expect it to do very much. And one of the challenges of making humanoid robots is because we're so used to seeing all the nuance and the tiny micro movements of the face and all this stuff, which just isn't there. I mean, with our Harry robot, that's exactly what we play with, and to use art as a platform for experimenting with these things, to make people aware of these factors that having robots in the home or in social situations is an incredibly challenging prospect, because if you're trying to have a humanoid robot, you're missing out on so much, and it can be misinterpreted. And I think it's just the fact that we know so little in a way, and as you say, robots are very temperamental, and I mean, we break down as well. We all die, it's just they have a shorter life. But we're really at the beginning of so much of this stuff, and we applaud ourselves for doing big steps, walking robots, running robots, and these things, but we've still got so far to go.
I also have something to add. There's a robotic artist, Norman White. He lives in Canada, in Toronto, and he's for years already busy with artificial intelligence, and he was actually one of the first artists who started on an art school, an electronic department, already in the 70s. I wish I had lived in Canada at that time, but I didn't. But he made a robot who didn't look like a robot in a mall for people to... He was talking and looked like a boat, and he would cry and ask, "Please, can you move me? Please, can you help me?" And people would start to move around this object. And then at a certain point he would say, "Go away." It was playing with the same idea. As long as people got interested in them, the robot would say that you would go away. And if you would go away, he would say, "Why are you leaving? Come again." And I heard from a curator who once put a robot in an exhibition that for some reason they couldn't turn the robot off because of the electronics and the movement, and because it was shipped. And then in the morning she came in the gallery, and then she heard this huge weird object crying, "Hello, is anybody there?" I really like that. Norman White. He has a website called the Normill because he lives in a huge mill, and he was actually also one of the first persons who were already involved in the ARPANET and the internet for universities, and he really did a lot of email or before email mail art type of electronic mail art type of bulletin boards. Wonderful work he made. And what he said, what I really liked about robotics, he said that he liked the vulnerability of robots because we are vulnerable too. He loved the idea that things are breaking down. Actually, that's what I like about robots, that they break down.
You could, the final word from Ghislaine.
It's a big discussion that's happening everywhere, and I think it's really important. There's a lot you can read about this, the anthropomorphization of robotics, but also the AI scene are talking about this too as well. So even if it's not in a physical robot, how do we start to make AI, virtual assistants? Yeah, it's a little dot on your table and you're talking to it like it's a human, like all our kids do, So I think the deception discussion and the uncanny valley, which is constantly moving, because actually across time, the uncanny valley, we become more and more used to things. So it's a moving line. Deception is all around us. So if we take, for example, take it the other way from robots and take it into humans and into cyborgs, how do you know who's a cyborg? How do you know, actually, when you meet someone, at a party? I work a lot with different cyborgs. There's probably 40 or 50 cyborg, part cyborg people now touring the world, talking about their implants. There's Moon Rebus with her implant in the elbow, which is seismic activity, where she dances as soon as an earthquake happens or volcano somewhere in the world. There's Cyborg Nest in London. There's a whole load in Barcelona who have got implants that feel weather in different ways. So their heads vibrate in different ways linked to cyclone activities. You can't see that, so you don't know. If you meet someone as a friend or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner or whatever, whether that person, and we will know less and less on that. So I think we have our own personal responsibility, I guess, and our own ethics to work with, to actually question and look and not expect to just take it at face value. We've always got to now start to question that down. So there's, many, there's this one slide I had with human right through to robot, right through to avatar. These layers are going to be all around us in multiple ways, more and more for the future. So we've got to question everything.
Very, very quick.
The thing that worries me about that is, for instance, gambling is designed. Okay. So for instance, gambling or other things that civilization came up with, there are things that are designed to manipulate our psychophysiology in order to reach certain results, and we cannot control it. Like, for instance, I go on my Facebook to do something, but then I get caught up in the timeline because it's designed to make me addicted. And
you can avoid it, and you can turn it off.
I get it.
But you cannot go in Facebook. Everybody has the choice to not do it.
That's exactly what I was saying, because I did get off Facebook, and it completely damaged my social life. Like, it was impossible to get to any events because of the Facebook. But that's not the point. I mean, I found this event through Facebook. So, I can't get off Facebook. I can't. But the point is not that. The point is that I'm worried that there are increasingly more and more technologies that are designed specifically for that, for manipulating our psychophysiology in order to get more profit. And that is fine as long as it is, I don't think it's our responsibility. I don't think we can take it at face value. I don't think we can comprehend that. And I don't think we can protect ourselves from becoming literally a slave in the system. So I had hopes for GDPR, but I don't think GDPR is really changing anything. It just became another one of these click, accept exercises. But I really hope that people like you, you know so much and so amazing. And I just really hope that people like you have some kind of idea of how to navigate in that kind of world. Because, you know, when I see my grandmother, you know, talking about this kind of things, like, she's completely out of it. And even my mother, and even the people who are couple of, you know, even the people who are not in the tech field, they're completely out of it. They're complete slaves to the system.
I don't think that's totally true. I really don't think we should underestimate people. I think there's a lot of debate in mass media. There's a lot of myths set up and fake news, we know it. The discussion about fakeness is there. So, but I think we have to look at this huge movement that's happening around tech for good and social tech and social impact tech, which is a lot of those outputs are doing the exact opposite. So you talked about VR in relationship to use for mental health stuff. You mentioned a couple of projects. There's a huge amount of work happening with tech towards actually positive outputs as well. There is a lot of negative too, I agree. So we have to look carefully. But it is mainly invisible. It's like on the news at the moment, the young blood transfusion stuff. I don't know if people know about that. That just hit the news today. It's been around for a while. $8,000 for a litre of young blood, you know, so that you can transfuse yourself with young blood and you will live longer, be healthier, etc. Yeah. You know, that is, I mean, you know, for all we know, 2 people in this room have already had transplants of young blood. We can't see that. Yeah, I find that quite scary, that. But, you know, it's like these different things that are around. So we have to question, we have to read, we have to look. So my mum's Parkinson's, 78, absolutely brilliant on technology. It's different everywhere, yeah.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for your question. Ine Poppe, Ghislaine Boddington, John Holder, thank you so much. And thank you for listening.